folks, Rob of Two Guys on a Ride, and today I'm standing in front of this beautiful 1965 Starcraft Holiday, and it's a beautiful boat. And yeah, you know, we usually do cars and we'll do classic cars, but today we've got this beautiful classic boat, and I'm back here at Idle Ridge, and this boat belongs to Jim, but I thought I'd sneak out here and show you folks about it because, well, he's inside taking a nap or something. I'm not quite sure. And, you know, I get to play with this boat a little bit without him. Oh, wait a minute. We got Jim here.
Hey,
he's in the boat napping. Oh, so I see what it is. You invite me up to look at your boat, but then you take it over and you're sleeping at the helm.
That's right. Well, we're parked now, so it's safe.
That's right. That's safe.
Right.
So we're inside this beautiful boat. Jim, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on in here, and is there anything that's new, or is this all original as well?
Well, it's absolutely all original, and again, I'm a purist, and it was so important to me to preserve what was here. And another thing that is so nostalgic is the old power tilt. But it had no indication of what position the lower unit was at.
Right.
Because that was the first one. And then, I'm the old school guy, so we've got a very prominent tachometer. We've got mechanical oil pressure, mechanical temp, and mechanical amps. And, I just polished everything. I took every screw out and I polished them and got the wax out of all the crevices because George was he took such wonderful care of his stuff.
Well, you can see that it was definitely put away every year, kind of like I always did with my boat. Yeah, I put it in the garage and then I detailed it. I went top to bottom and got her spotless. So when she hit the water in the springtime, she was spotless like off the showroom floor.
And when I am finding something that's worth polishing back, and you take off all the hardware and you take off all those screws and you're taking all that old dried wax out of there.
Right.
And I'm just smiling saying, well, they cared about it.
But you know what? What's kind of cool, I don't know if you thought about this, some of those wax residue might have been in there from when you were a teenager.
Absolutely, because the boat was built when I was 10.
Yeah, there you go.
And now I'm 64.
Oh, how about that? And when you were on being pulled on the back skiing, he would have taken it and put it away every year and cleaned it.
Well, and very careful, and you can see that it didn't sit out in the weather. He was either using it or it was put away or it was under his boat lift with a nice canopy on it. And so, the weather, the sun is actually the biggest enemy of anything.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Now, the seats and seat covers, are they still original? Or
no, they're original, but George tells me that the reason why this side doesn't match with that side.
I just noticed that.
I guess back in the day, he had a few issues, and that's, I guess, how they matched it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then what I mentioned earlier, what I'm so excited about is it's got the little Iron Duke 4-cylinder, they nicknamed it.
Right.
But
that's right. That's what it was for the Chevy 2.
For the Chevy 2.
Yeah.
So if you wanted the most affordable car, you went to a Chevy dealership, you ordered a Chevy 2, and you ordered a straight stick,
right?
Maybe a radio, and then that little 110 horse Iron Duke 4, and it got you the mileage and the durability and everything.
Yeah.
But George took such good care of this boat that after I massaged it from probably 10 years of slumber, and the worst thing that happened,
right?
And George probably didn't know about it, but it was parked with that terrible oxygenated gas in there.
Oh,
and there was so much stuff corroded.
Yeah.
And so much stuff that I had to replace.
Oh.
And barely could salvage the tanks. They were so rusty inside. And then we had some other bugs to work out.
Okay.
But now with probably 50, 75 man hours in it.
Right.
And of course, that's probably really 25 because I work slow now. But I'm just so grateful to have it, and it's so much fun.
Well, now tell me, you're telling me this is an 18 or 18 and a half foot?
18.
18. It's aluminum, so it's light, but still, if you get 4 or 6 people on here, you've got that little Iron
Duke 4.
Iron Duke 4, 110 horsepower, and that moves this boat well enough to have people ski behind it?
Well, yes, and when you pile 6 people in here,
right,
it'll take a little while But on
to build up steam, but she
on
gets
the,
there, huh?
On the original speedometer,
Right.
it'll get around 29,
Okay.
30.
Okay.
And if you remember, even back in the 70s,
Right.
breaking 50 miles an hour on water was breaking the land speed record.
Right. Right. Right.
Now these big wet jets do
sure.
80.
Oh, sure.
You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it takes some time, but once she gets there, she pulls all day long.
And it's just run so sweet. And another fun story, the year after we got it, which I didn't do, I was still debugging it.
Okay.
And George was still at his cabin one day. And so we pulled up and we found George there and we gave him a spin and we had stuff set up on the shelf here.
Right.
And he kept moving the stuff that was on the shelf because he wanted to watch the oil pressure. He wanted to watch the temperature. He was a real technical.
That's what you kept eye on in those days.
That's right.
That was I noticed because those are what's prominent. Your speedo is way over to the left.
Yeah.
That's not prominent on a boat because
Right.
you're looking at your RPMs of that little 4-cylinder, and again, yeah, you're watching that oil pressure.
And I to save the old switches, I took them open
Oh.
and I restored the switches.
Really?
And I got the clicking back real good. But it's fun to know that the boat is 54 years old, and I want the lighters to know that it's going to live for another 54.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, that's what I like about it. Like I said earlier, you are a purist, but you're a preservationist too, because you will find something like this. And like I said at the beginning, a lot of people will say, it's an old 50-year-old boat. What do I want with that? Well, there's not many people out there like you that keep things like this, and this is living, breathing, moving, and still enjoying history, and you're doing it. And it's awesome.
I'll tell you what I've always told the guys, because when I got enough money, my first love was the American Indian.
Okay.
And so I brought the first Indian back to town in probably the mid-late 70s.
Okay.
And all the buddies came over and they wanted it and they wanted one and they were drooling. And I said, listen, you got to understand something. If I'm not driving a 50, 60, 70-year-old car, boat, or motorcycle, I'm not happy. But you have to remember, if you're not willing to stand on the side of the road
Right.
or go go afloat in the water for a while, then it's not for you. Because every once in a while you got to stop and fix a problem or something like that. Where the new boats and everything today, you just turn the key and go and you don't think anything of it.
Right.
Back in those days, there was a little more to it.
But everything was so mechanical and things broke.
That's right.
But that was part of the experience. It takes you back to that earlier day, both the good and the bad.
Exactly.
And that's the experience that a lot of people live for. It takes us back to our youth, takes us back to our very young childhood. And like this boat does, to bring it full circle here, it takes you back to when you learned how to water ski that one Sunday of summer.
And that's huge.
Gosh.
And then the steering wheel started wearing through. And so George just bought one of those deals at the auto store where you wrapped it around the steering wheel.
Like just rubber covering
and
or
then
something.
then you laced it with that lace.
Yep.
And so I decided I didn't like that. And so then I pulled the steering wheel and I restored the steering wheel and then I restored this part. But anything that you restore, you have, in my book, you have to put it back as righteous as it was.
Right.
And if you can't,
Right.
like for example over here was the old air horn switch.
Okay. Yep.
Well, that got discontinued when I did it the new style way. So then I just put I built an aluminum plate and put it over to cover up the hole.
Oh, sure.
But this is, and I had a terrible time restoring the rear view mirror because that was in such tough shape. But you put them back as correct as you possibly can. But if you can't get a certain part, in some certain circumstances, you have to have it made. Now, the Starcraft emblem on the back.
Right.
Well, there was only one there and it was broken too, so I restored that one. But now if I don't find the other Starcraft emblem, maybe back in his day he scraped it on a dock or something and knocked it off.
Oh, sure.
But I'll hunt for a while, and if I can't find one, then you have to resort to having it manufactured.
Okay.
Yeah. And then George would really freak out because what these parts cost today compared to back then is amazing. And then I'll show you the little Iron Duke 4 here.
Oh, sure. Let's
And
take
it's
a look
just
at that.
as cute as a bug's ear.
Look at that. And promptly named Iron Duke because it's still kicking all these years later. How many hours do you know are on the boat?
And unfortunately, very few things came with an hour meter.
Oh, I see.
And so there wasn't an hour meter on it, but it had just such gentle use. And like I say, all the time I was working on it, I would just close my eyes and picture those three couples,
right?
George and Swindy Leiter, Denny and Mary Lou Fenice, my mom and dad, and then Jim and Betty Dindorf, and they would take a tour around all of Big Fish Lake.
And this little motor just puttering right along.
Oh, and like I said, it runs like your grandma's Singer sewing machine.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, thank you so much. I absolutely love coming up to Idle Ridge because every time I do, you've got something else that you've preserved history. That you've preserved this history itself, and you've done it again with this absolutely beautiful boat, and thank you so very much for sharing it with us.
Well, and remember the one thing, we're all just keepers of it.
Exactly.
And when you care about something and you've got it back to new condition, then it's when the next changing of the guard comes, then there'll be a sale, and then people paid good money for it. And so they care about it, and they will continue the history on. But this boat's going nowhere out of the collection.
Gotcha.
It's very important to me.
I don't blame you. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.